Hi there, it's day 12 of the Sunny Balwani trial. I'll give you the highlights of the testimony today. And what did Sunny say to Elizabeth Holmes? And was the defense successful in keeping out those representations made regarding whether or not Theranos had any deals with the military? So I'll get into it with you. We'll talk about it. We'll look at some emails between Dan Edlin and some military reps. And we'll look at those darn texts between Elizabeth Holmes and Sunny Balwani and what Sunny said to Elizabeth. So, hi there, I'm Michelle Hagan. I'm a legal analyst and a former prosecutor. You may recognize me because I provided a lot of legal analysis on the Elizabeth Holmes case. And this video is for information, educational purposes. Simply my opinion. I want to know what yours is, so please do leave a comment. What's your analysis on all of this? So, in case you popped onto this channel, Sunny Balwani was the former COO of Theranos, a blood testing company that Elizabeth Holmes started. She has already been on trial. She was convicted for 4 counts of fraud, 1 relating to conspiring with Balwani to defraud investors, and 3 counts for defrauding individual investors. And Sunny Balwani faces the exact same 12 counts. 6 counts relating to defrauding investors, 4 counts relating to defrauding, allegedly, defrauding patients, 2 conspiracy counts, allegedly conspiring with Sunny Balwani to defraud investors and conspiring to defraud patients. All right. So let's take a look. Let me give you the highlights of the testimony. Daniel Edlin went to, I think I'm right on this, he went to Duke University with Christian Holmes, Elizabeth Holmes' brother, and I think that's how he got connected to working with Theranos. Anyway, he was their senior product manager at Theranos. He was responsible, if you remember from the Holmes case, he did a lot of the investor tours, the so-called fake demos, and he was also involved with the military contracts, and I'll talk to you about that in this video. So he also testified regarding what statements were made in the marketing materials because he put those marketing materials together. All right, so the defense was not able to keep out these statements, any evidence relating to statements regarding Theranos' relationships, contracts, whether they made any money with the U.S. military, and whether the Theranos technology, the Edisons, were deployed in the battlefield, which they weren't. And we're going to find out why that is. One of the reasons, anyway. All right, so then Balwani's counsel also wanted the judge to exclude some text between Elizabeth Holmes and Balwani. Text relating to them complaining apparently about flying commercially. You know, I don't know why the defense wanted to keep it out. I guess they figured, well, they did use a little profanity. Maybe that's why. And that's might be why the judge is asking them to redact some of that. Maybe that's relating to it. I think they referred to the people that were working on the airplanes, flight attendants, as effing morons. I think that's probably what's going to be redacted. But anyway, we'll look at that text. And Dan Edlin testified on direct examination that he put together some of these marketing materials. One of the brochures was distributed at Walgreens. Theranos had wellness centers at Walgreens, so you could walk in and have your blood tested, right? And the statements that were made in these marketing materials that were given out at Walgreens were the following. Edlin testified that the brochures said, quote, "At Theranos, all we need is a tiny sample." Well, that wasn't really true in the Holmes case because apparently they were doing venous draws too. The other thing that was in the brochures is that Theranos can perform, quote, "full range of tests." Well, in the Holmes case, that wasn't true either because apparently they could only do one or a couple of these tests. And I think in Balwani's case, in this trial, I think Mark Pandori, the former lab director, testified they were never able to do a full range of tests. They also said in the marketing materials, One drop, a world of answers. Yeah, one drop, a world of answers. And, quote, better answers faster. Because what the prosecution is alleging is that Holmes and Balwani made these representations that the technology was fast, accurate, reliable, and cheap, right? And it was on their website, it was in their patient advertising, it was in these brochures at Walgreens, it was in their PowerPoint presentations to investors, etc. So were those statements false or were they true? Were they fraudulent or were they true? Well, in the Holmes case, they found that they were fraudulent. We're going to see what happens in the Balwani case. So he also said in the marketing materials that Theranos offered, quote, tests with the highest levels of accuracy. Edlin also said that he believed that Theranos' claims were true. He believed that they were true, that these were fast, accurate, reliable tests. He testified he had no basis to know whether or not these were accurate or reliable tests, but he said, I had no reason to doubt that these claims were accurate. No reason to doubt it was accurate. So in other words, he didn't know. That's what he's testifying. He didn't know that the technology wasn't accurate. Well, I think there's some emails relating to when he was doing the fake demos, allegedly, when he was doing these fake demos, when the potential investors wanted to have their blood tested, and they'd show them the Edison, and they would give them, give them a blood test to sample their blood to see how the technology works. I think Edlin and some other people were involved in setting up those labs, or I should say setting up the conference rooms to do those demos, and whether or not they were using what's called null protocol. So in other words, the analyzers they were using wouldn't actually run the test right there. They would take the test and they would do it in the lab later. But it might appear that they're doing the test. So, whether those were fake demos or not. So we'll see how that turns out. Edlin also testified that he was the one that prepared those binders of the marketing materials for the investors. Now, in the Holmes case, Lisa Peterson, who was a representative from the DeVos family, and a couple of the other investor witnesses testified that they got these binders of materials from Elizabeth Holmes. But Edlin said that the materials inside those binders were for information from Holmes and Balwani. See, so that's implicating Balwani in the materials that were given to the investors. Were they true? Were those materials, those statements inside, were they true? Were those representations true or false? Edlin also said that he created a binder for Rupert Murdoch. He said that he also worked with the military on potential deals, and we'll look at a couple of those emails on his interaction with the military. But he says that Holmes gave him that material. So the material relating that they were giving to the military came from Holmes. That's interesting. So is that a way that the defense could possibly argue to distance Balwani from that? Balwani didn't have anything to do with the military contracts. Is that what the defense is going to say? That those relationships, that it was solely based on Edlin and other people and Elizabeth Holmes, and Balwani had nothing to do with it? We're going to take a look at those emails, and you let me know whether you think Balwani was involved. So, of course, the jury has to make that call, right? But we can still analyze it. We can still look at it. All right, so then they got into testimony regarding a text message that Balwani sent to Holmes in 2011, where Balwani says that he can't be apart from her, can't be apart from you. And he tells Elizabeth that you are perfect. Now, I guess that relates to him. Then maybe the prosecution is arguing that because he says he couldn't be away from her, that the two of them were inseparable. Therefore, they worked together. Therefore, they were co-conspirators. Is that what they're arguing? We'll see. Then, over multiple objections by Balwani's counsel, the prosecution asked how old Elizabeth Holmes was at the time those texts were sent. Edlin testified that she was 30 and Balwani was 48. I don't know what that gets to. Maybe they're trying to say that Balwani was the one who was mentoring. Balwani was more culpable. He was the older, he was the wiser, more successful business person. Is that what the prosecution is arguing? I don't know. So over more objections by the defense, the prosecution asked how much business experience Holmes had. Edlin said that her business experience was limited to Theranos, but that Balwani had a very successful career. So again, maybe that's trying to paint the picture that Balwani is the one who was directing and guiding Elizabeth Holmes. I don't know. We'll see. So on direct exam, it wrapped up by Edlin explaining why he quit. Why did he leave Theranos? He said that he left because when those Wall Street Journal articles came out, I think it's the one relating to the one that John Carreyrou wrote, and it was published in the Wall Street Journal, that blew the whistle on Theranos. And Edlin said that he reached the conclusion that Theranos technology couldn't do what the company claimed it could do. So he quit. On cross-examination, what did the defense do? Now, you have to, there's a couple goals in cross. You want to test the witness's credibility, the veracity. You want to see what kind of experience or expertise they would have to talk about, whether or not this technology works. So the defense attorney asked questions focusing on whether or not Edlin had any expertise in science. No, he didn't. Did he have any expertise with Theranos technology or intellectual property? No, he didn't. So I guess maybe they're trying to say that any opinion he gives or any testimony he gives, the jury should just ignore it because he doesn't have any expertise in science. So how could he evaluate whether or not the technology was working properly and whether or not these claims were fraudulent or not? They also had this witness testify that Balwani did not have a degree in biosciences. So again, Balwani didn't have a degree in biosciences. I guess the defense is trying to say, again, this is Elizabeth's company. It's Elizabeth's technology. She set up the technology. And I think it's what the defense said in opening is that he relied on he understood the technology based on what the Theranos scientists told him. He's not a scientist. He wouldn't know whether or not maybe that's what they're argue. He didn't know whether or not the technology worked or not. He was relying on everyone else, on their representation. He was relying on the scientists, on the techs. So maybe he didn't know, so therefore no fraud. I don't know. Maybe that's what they're trying to argue. So he also said that Edlin said that the person that did have the expertise was, guess who? Elizabeth Holmes, not Balwani. So maybe that helps the defense. All right, so let's look at, I want to show you a couple emails here quickly. Let me show you the text that the prosecution was referring to today. Here are some texts between Elizabeth Holmes and Sunny Balwani. You'll see EAH is Holmes, Balwani's over here, received the text. Came from Holmes's. They downloaded these off of some of her devices. So this is June 2011. She refers to him as Boo. And again, you can go look at the video I did on the revealing relationship text between Elizabeth Holmes and Balwani to get an idea of, did they work together? Because again, this is a conspiracy case. Two or more people have an agreement to commit a crime. Were these two working together, or was one rogue doing something totally different and the other one didn't know about it? Or were these, as the prosecution alleged, they were always in constant communication with each other? They were always involved in every aspect, both of them. Maybe that's what the prosecution is trying to point out by this text, because you can go ahead and read these. Here's a text that Sunny says to Elizabeth. Through Skype, we are together. Can't be apart from you from even a few hours. Can't be apart from you for even a few hours. She says, I know. He says, it's amazing. He says, I know. Ultimate blessing. And she says, ultimate blessing. And then she says, I love you. Okay. So maybe the prosecution is saying here that they can't even be apart for a few hours. Are we supposed to believe that they're not working together? Maybe that's what the prosecution is using this for. All right, so we'll see. So now let's look at some military emails that Dan Edlin had with some of the military representatives. Okay, and this one is with Major Cook, so we'll go down. I'm going to take you to the bottom here so we can Here are some materials that were put together at Theranos that were provided to the military. And you can tell me whether or not these statements were true or false. So here's where they're saying the military application of the Theranos analyzer, the Edison. Medevac, the ability to test and triage wounded soldiers. Genetic testing, telecommunication, brings quick and accurate diagnostic capabilities to the field. Did it? No, they never even got there. So why is this in these materials? They also talk about a cost saving to the military by using their technology. You can go ahead and read this. Using data from a finger stick of blood or other microvolumes. Well, they were actually doing venous draws in some of their testing, and they were also, in the Holmes case, using third-party devices. So I don't know. Are these representations accurate? The ability to triage and stabilize patients in the field. Maybe this is their hope. Maybe these representations were their hope of what they thought they could do, but they were never able to achieve this objective. And were these representations made to the investors? And in the Holmes case, they said they were. They were told that the analyzer, the technology, was being deployed in the battlefield. So you can go ahead and read through these. Okay, so getting to the email here with Cook sends to Elizabeth Holmes that he's working with Mike McGinnis, and the two of us are going to be working with Carl Sims through his requirement with you in Theranos. We were wondering if you could provide forward a summary of these existing technology, etc. Right? So she responds. This is where Dan Edlin comes in. Dan Edlin is copied. He's the Theranos project manager who will be overseeing. He's the product manager who's going to be overseeing the work together. So Dan Edlin was the one who was responsible for overseeing the contracts with the military. And Cook is reaching out, asking for more feedback. You can read this. It's all CC to Elizabeth Holmes, so she's kept in the loop. Just scrolling through, you can take a look at this. And Daniel Eden writes to Major Cook, Theranos will in fact be able to provide GPS-disabled devices, and we will be able to make modifications for you as well. Right? So he's telling them, we're going to be working with you. This is in 2012 now. If you look at the indictment video, you'll see that the allegations in this trial and in the Elizabeth Holmes was dealing with 2014 and 2015. So this is prior to, but they're still trying to work it out and figure out, whether or not this project, their technology is going to work with the military. Here's another email. Looking to evaluate your system, Major Cook says, and then Cook says, CCing to Elizabeth Holmes and Dan Edlin. Major Cook, thanks for clarifying the proposal, etc. The reason I'm showing you this email is who's not in this email trail? Who's not mentioned? Who's not mentioned in here? Maybe this is something the defense could argue. I don't see Balwani, do you? I don't see Balwani's name. I don't see him being CC'd. All right, let's look at this other one here. Here's another email. So keep in mind, is Balwani mentioned? So here is, again, another representative from the military, Martin Drake, Chief Science and Technology Command Science Advisor. Right, reaches out to Elizabeth Holmes. I'm the Science Advisor for the U.S. Central Command, U.S. CENTCOM. General Mattis charged our command surgeon and me to conduct an investigation into the comparative benefits of your technology and the approach. They have, and talking about the Research and Development Division and the Medical Acquisition Division, they have experience in evaluating medical capabilities suitable for military use. This is in 2013. They're reaching out to Elizabeth Holmes. We're curious about your technology. Can we use it? Daniel Edlin steps in. He says, thank you very much for your note. We're going to be preparing. Actually, let me scroll up here and see if the one just prior. Yeah, this is the earlier one. So he reaches out to Dan Edlin, right, because he's the one who's in charge at Theranos of overseeing these military contracts. And Dan Edlin says to, Drake says to Dan Edlin, thanks for your response. I understand your investment and appreciate what you have achieved thus far. Hopefully, working with us will help you better define how the average user sees your product, the Theranos product. And it talks about, unless the equipment was already in theater today, I would be hard-pressed to find resources to execute to an acceptable level to be able to make a meaningful determination of the military utility of the Theranos technology. So, and unfortunately, there's no funds programmed to do an experiment with your equipment. All that said, I'm willing to take a peek at whether we can salvage. With absolute certainty, when will you have a full-up system in the hands of our users in theater ready to conduct the experiment? So Drake is asking Edlin, when is your technology going to be ready? This is 2013 now. Edlin responds back and CCs it to Elizabeth Holmes. And again, I don't see Balwani mentioned anywhere. Mr. Drake, thank you very much for your note. We appreciate all the work that you and your team have been doing to support our test efforts. We have put a significant amount of resources and investments heavily in preparing for this deployment. We remain focused on being able to provide you with infrastructure that can address many of the unmet needs faced in theater. We would not need you to commit to any more funding. We hope that we will still be able to deploy our equipment as planned. We hope to have the opportunity to implement a successful evaluation experiment in the near future. So that's 2013. This is the year before the investors in this, in the indictment, the investors in the counts that are alleged before they start investing, and it's also before the counts alleged regarding the patients. But here it is showing that they still don't have it deployed. They still haven't worked it out. The military doesn't have the funding. And they're trying to figure out whether we can salvage this project. And Edlin responds, we have been working to determine a date in line with your question. When is the technology going to be available? Elizabeth Holmes is CC. I don't see Balwani. Again, they set up a call to talk to each other. Go ahead and read through that. And then Edlin says, thank you very much for your time and the phone call we had yesterday. What would be needed to be able to continue? We believe we have the opportunity to make a real impact on combat zone care with systems we have developed, which is why we have been so deeply committed to working with U.S. CENTCOM in theater and to all our associated work we have been doing for this program. I want to let you know that we'll do whatever it takes. Please do let us know if there's anything else we can do to assist you in the upcoming funding application process, basically. As mentioned, our objective has been to be able to deliver the equipment to theater by the end of the year. So again, they still don't have the technology ready to be deployed. What representations are they making to investors? Are they making any at this time? Then in August 2013, Drake says to Edlin, we require a firm commitment from you when Theranos will be available in theater and ready to test. When will you know beyond doubt, you will be ready to test? When will that date be? They want to know. So what's going on in the background here is they're trying to figure out how to get this technology working so they can use it, so they can deploy it with the military. They never get there. And I'll show you why, and one of the reasons why, and that's in the next email. So this is from Dan Edlin. He's keeping Elizabeth in the loop relating to an email he sent Marty, telling Marty from the military, we will remain focused on being able to begin the program. And he gives a date, August 1st of 2013. They never get there. All right, and why is that? Show you here in the last email. So this is the trail of emails, again with Dan Edlin, their product manager at Theranos, senior product manager. He's reaching out to the team at Theranos to find out, and he says to Elizabeth, regarding the temperature data, the problem is the Edison is too sensitive to the temperature, and you can't use it in high temperature. You can't, out in the field, depending on what climate they're in, it's too hot. So the analyzer can't work. I think that's what they find out. That's one of the reasons why they can't use it. So Edlin reaches out. Hi, Elizabeth. I asked Daniel, Gary, Tony, etc. if we had any data around our devices maintaining internal temperature while exposed to high outside temperature. Here's the feedback. Daniel Young says, hi, how high are the temperatures you're referring to? Gary says, nope, the Edison did not have a way to cool down. If you can't cool down the analyzer, you can't run the tests. They would shut down the technology. The analyzers would shut down. So they knew. This shows, apparently, it shows that they knew. Couldn't be deployed in the battlefield. Many years ago, here's one of the other employees. Many years ago, we would have problems with the readers due to poor air conditioning in the labs. And they were reporting problems of the readers achieving high temperatures in cold places. So they had problems with cold places too. This is Edlin telling Elizabeth Holmes. But do you see Balwani's name? I don't know. Maybe that can be helpful to the defense. We'll see. So, but here we go. I see his name. Hi, Elizabeth. Another email from Dan Edlin. This is in 2013. Please find the following attached and it's all the temperature data. And then he says, also, we are holding a meeting tomorrow with Sunny to review the Theranos web portal. Are they referring to the website? Maybe this had nothing to do with whether or not they could deploy the technology when they talked to Sunny. But his name is mentioned. So we could restart the redesign. I think he's referring to the redesign of the web portal, not the analyzer. So maybe Sunny had nothing to do with this, according to these emails. Maybe that could be argued. And again, hi, Elizabeth. Attached are all the materials previously sent regarding the new temperature document. Did they send it to the military? And he says, this is what we sent. Let's see. I'm trying to sort out that. Let's see. He says, hi, Elizabeth. Wanted to resend the AFRICOM information for review to her for purposes of a future research protocol. And then he says, I'm trying to sort out the hiccups with MedCom and come out with a new way ahead on my research protocol. So, they're having problems. And he also talks about the CLIA and the FDA issues. General Ham remains interested in supporting your product. And he's reaching out to Elizabeth. Can you please send me the QA data from the samples? And then an updated deck and clinical slides he's also providing. And he tells her he'll drop by to discuss. They're trying to figure out whether or not the temperature data is going to be a no-go on their technology being deployed. And Elizabeth says to Dan, did we ever send this out? He says, unfortunately, we did not. We couldn't reach a consensus on what the temperature data would be. And at the time, we did not have all the assay development validation data to send. And then she says, yes, print out the package for me to glance at this week, and we will do that. Doesn't say print out the package and send it to Sunny, and I don't see Sunny Balwani's name here. So, what do you think? That's just my analysis. Maybe that's a way that the defense could distance him from anything to do with the representations regarding the military, regarding the revenue that they raised from the military, regarding the representations of deploying their technology with the military. Maybe those representations were made to the investors and maybe Balwani had nothing to do with it. I don't know. What do you think? So I want to know what your analysis is. Leave a question, leave a comment. Let me know what you think. And please do support my work by subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Please hit that like button, hit the notification bell, share these videos. And thank you very much for watching, and thank you for supporting my work by subscribing.